Joining me now are Jacinta Price, Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs and the Director of the Indigenous Program at the Centre for Independent Studies, cis.org.au. You must go and check that out. And Alex Antic, Federal Senator for South Australia. Now, Jacinta, Alex, great to see you both. Jacinta, when most Indigenous people talk about the voice, they're talking about the latest political thought bubble from Canberra, but when you talk about the voice, you talk about the musical reality show that your husband was on and did so brilliantly in. So combining two of your many areas of expertise, your own wonderful music talents, which you yourself have, and your expertise in Indigenous affairs, I want to ask you in a second about this idea of the Indigenous second verse for Advanced Australia Fair and get both your and Alex's views on that. But firstly, Jacinta, the member for Warringah, Zali Steggall, today called for a minute's silence during Australia Day to grieve the historic suffering of Indigenous communities. Do you support this idea of Zali Steggall's?
No, I don't. Look, in the past, I've said, if people choose to want to take the morning to mourn, then fair enough. I think individuals can do as they please on Australia Day and spend the day as they please. But I don't believe that this idea should then be thrust upon Australians, the rest of Australia, to do the same. And, you don't hear a peep out of Zali Steggall's with regard to the really tough issues. It's quite easy to cherry pick those easy ones and appear as though you care for Indigenous Australians in the most shallowest of ways by making these demands, putting these demands on other Australians. But I don't agree with it at all. I agree that let Australians spend Australia Day how they want to spend Australia Day. The vast majority of us want to celebrate it, so be it. Let us celebrate it. If there are those that want to mourn, then go ahead and mourn. But don't expect everybody else to do as you're expecting us to do. And I'm sort of sick of this behaviour that is encouraging gaslighting and manipulation from activists and leftists who would like to control the majority. It's inappropriate and it has to stop.
Alex, isn't it a bit hypocritical given how Zali Steggall's passion for closing down coal mines, closing down coal power stations and replacing them with Chinese-built windmills and solar farms basically rips jobs out of rural Indigenous communities and ships them straight over to China? So a bit hypocritical, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think Jacinta's, where do you go after that response? You sort of nailed it 7 times over there. I really think that is the point. The point that Jacinta makes about this having really nothing to do with real-world issues that affect Indigenous communities and remote communities is probably the most important one, and I think that's the point you're touching on. This is sort of almost Groundhog Day when it comes to Australia Day. We know when Australia Day is coming up, and we know for 2 reasons. The first one is we see the Australia Day Lamb ad with Sam Kekovich, and the next one is we hear the gun going off at the start of the woke Olympics, or the lighting of the torch, and it's almost like this sort of race to the finish line for sort of councils, inner city councils and politicians to try and come up with the next little event to try and promote like this. So look, I don't think this is helpful. This is a very simple equation. The name Australia Day gives it away. It's Australia. We're all Australians. We don't need this divisive conduct. It's not helpful. Let's just get on with it and celebrate it, as Jacinta says, in our own individual ways as we choose.